So if we're referring to KPIs in terms of outbound specifically, I would say the two most important ones, first one is not as important as number two, would be open rate and then reply rate. I'm purposely not saying click-through rate because I don't believe cold emails should have a hyperlink like a Calendly where you should get the prospect to actually click through it. I think a really effective cold email is more so to get a reply back, not a click-through. So open rate and reply rate would be more important. If we're talking about bottom of funnel, like just like sales motion, not like outbound, it would be conversion rate per stage. So every company, every AE has different, depending if you're SMB or mid-market, whatever it is, there's different stages within your CRM. So what's your conversion rate from stage to stage? And then what's your overall deal win rate? At a bare minimum, there's a lot more, but like at a bare minimum, if you had like a Swiss Army knife of like reports you should be tracking, those should be it from an outbound perspective, and then sort of like a bottom of funnel. I'm going to talk outbound for a minute because I think that's going to slightly change, and I think they're just going to slowly realize it. AE specifically, or sales specifically, is going to have more of a focus of going towards this one-to-one approach when prospecting versus getting a list of emails and sort of blasting it out, even if it's like 100 to 200 a day. I think it's going to be more so like we'll work on sending up to 10 emails max per day. But those emails that are going to be sent out, I don't think they're going to be sent out directly to the prospect. They're going to be sent out to mutual connections, past customers, etc., and then using their existing network to try to make an introduction or to make a recommendation of some sorts. I think that's going to change. I think that's going to be it. So think of like old school sales where you had like the Rolodex and they had, had existing customers from the past or whatever it is. And that's how companies would hire a salesperson. They would want to make sure they hire a salesperson that had a Rolodex. It's going, things that history sorts of repeat itself. It happens with clothing, like fashion apparel, things that are old are now trendy. Same idea. I think that's going to start changing, where sales reps are going to have this old school mentality of prospecting through networking, building relationships. It's going to be a longer burn, but it's going to be very effective, which then is going to affect comp entirely, quotas, etc. And so I think there's going to be some friction in terms of what CEOs and companies build their forecast to be versus how to actually get there through this tactic. So I think there's going to be a little bit of friction there, but I think that's going to happen for sure. And I think given the tightening of budget from 2023, I think that's going to bleed over a little bit in 2024. Companies have and are cutting costs that they don't need, and they end up trying to just, instead of hiring more, just improving internal efficiency. So improving the way they train their reps and coach the reps. And I think they may invest in other resources, so like coaches, consultants, etc., that are very specific in an area of expertise. I think that versus like hiring a bunch of reps and go figure it out. I don't think it's dead. I just think you have to be a little bit more creative with how it works. So, for example, if you're calling somebody's cell phone, like now we know each other, right? We don't have each other's numbers, but if I were to give you my number right now and I were to tell you while we're still here live, call me, my phone won't recognize who you are, and my iPhone will either mark it, like automatically silence your call, and I won't even know you called, or I will see a call coming in, but it'll be tagged as spam likely, and I won't pick up. And so I don't know, when you're calling people's phone numbers, you don't know if they have iPhones, you don't know what's on the other end. So I like to assume that they do have an iPhone. That will happen. So when you're cold calling, I would say, for example, double tap, right? Like the type, when I say double tap, I mean call back to back, maybe even 3 times in a row, because you want to go with the notion of they may have iPhones, they may not pick up. So I think cold calling is not dead. Just the way to do the cold call is going to change. Also, you should treat the cold call like you would treat a cold email, where instead of just going completely cold, you can maybe use a referral or a reference, whatever it is, to do a cold call. I don't think it's dead. I definitely don't think it's dead. I'm just going to provide like a feature framework. So before you present a feature, most AEs, what they do is they go straight into the feature and talk about the value of the feature. The downside is they don't talk about the value in the context of what it is for the prospect. In other words, like when the prospect is looking at the feature, all they're thinking about is, yeah, but does that apply to my use case? And so one of the ways you can get the prospect to say, yes, that's perfect, that's exactly what I need, is before you show a feature, this is a rule of thumb, a framework, is you bring up the pain, the prospect's pain that you've learned in discovery, but you bring it in their words. So I'll give you an example. And then when you are done bringing up the pain, you tell them how you're going to solve that pain, then you show the feature. So I'll give you an example. If the prospect said, we'll use Mixmax as an example. You saw you're doing a demo of Mixmax. And on discovery, the prospect said, we have no clue into what's working in outbound, and we have no visibility on reporting for our outbound emails. When I am going to show maybe a reporting feature on Mixmax, I'm going to quote the prospect and say, hey, prospect, you had mentioned earlier on that your team has no visibility into reporting when doing outbound. So what I'm about to show you will give them the following 3 metrics to see, which is something that you mentioned earlier that you don't have. I'll mention the metrics, whatever the metrics are, and then I'll just show the feature. So the idea is I'm not going straight into the feature. I'm really just prioritizing the feature based on the prospect's problem, but I'm talking about the feature in the context of their problem, not just this is a valuable feature. It's a valuable feature to you because this is a problem you have. And then I'll finish this off with the demo part. Is many times AEs, they go through their feature talk track, or they show the feature and then they end the feature, and either they move to another feature or they ask any questions. That's common, those 2 things. What I'm saying is don't move to another feature. Don't ask, do you have any questions? What you really want to know is you want to do temperature checks. You want to gauge the level of interest of that feature to their problem. So an example of that would be like, you just showed the feature. Hey, prospect, on a scale of 1 through 10, 10 being this is exactly what we're looking for, 1 being why did you just show me this? Where do you feel like that feature falls in terms of solving blank? And so I'm essentially looking for a temperature check as to, did I solve that problem for you based on that feature that I just showed you? If yes, I've just micro closed you on that feature. If you do this enough times where you're micro closing, in other words, you're asking these type of questions at the end of the features, you're eventually stacking up your close, and closing just becomes a process of like asking questions throughout the demo. One framework is you introduce a problem in the email. So it's less of a trigger, but you just introduce a problem that the prospect may have. Now, in order to know that, you have to know your buyer persona really well. The easiest way is to learn about your existing closed won deals and understand what problems that they have, and then prospect to those types of lookalike customers. So you introduce a problem, and then you go straight into the solution that you offer. So, hey, usually when I speak with blank, they're having this issue. We solve it by doing X, Y, Z. And then a call to action. That call to action, you can have what I call a light CTA or an extra light CTA. So the difference between light CTA and extra light CTA is a typical CTA is like asking for time on their calendar. A light CTA is essentially just asking if this is worth a conversation. So light CTA may sound something like, would you be open to having a chat about this? Or would you be open to exploring this? That's light CTA. I'm asking a question, expecting a response. An extra light CTA is a very similar approach, except I'm not asking a question. I'm almost sort of like leaving a comment there to see, just like leaving it there, no question. If they're interested, they're going to reply back. And that would sound something like, let me know if this is something you'd be interested in. It's not a question. It's like, I'm not after you. I'm not desperate for your business. If this is relevant, let me know. And if it is relevant, they'll let you know. So introduce a problem, then introduce your solution. Then you can either use a light CTA or an extra light CTA. So that's one idea. The other idea for a cold email framework is what I call a teardown email. And that requires a lot more thinking and strategic thinking. It's where, I'll give you for instance, let's say you sell SEO services and you're prospecting for B2B businesses trying to offer your SEO services or SEO software. Then one thing I'd recommend is you go to their website and you do a little bit of a teardown in terms of their website SEO, and you find a handful of inefficiencies, a handful of red flags that are not necessarily so obvious, that would require some expert to pick up on it. And then you send that to them, and then you can use an extra light CTA. Hey, John, hope it's okay, but I took a look at your website and I noticed 7 red flags in regards to like SEO, and then like list out those red flags, like give them like really detailed information. And then at the bottom of that, you can say, we've helped social proof. So we've helped customer A, customer B, customer C improve XYZ. Usually when you include any customers that you've helped, it should be well known to the prospect that you're emailing. Let me know if this is something you'd be interested in discussing. So that email usually takes a little bit longer because you have to do the research, you have to diagnose and assess the website or whatever it is. You have to provide the details, then you include social proof, and then you can do an extra light CTA. Because both those frameworks require more thinking, you can't blast them and it doesn't work. And it's much more valuable than sending a typical cold email. So those are 2 cold emails that I get a lot of inbound leads, but I still prospect in some of my leads. One of my most recent customers where I coach their sales team, I got that through cold emailing. So just some ideas.